Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Pac-Man here, and I am from the likes of the Mexi Toys videos as always. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Pac-Man World Re-Pac for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, PC Steam, and finally the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we've essentially did manage to completely done with the forms of the first world in the game, which appears to be the pirate world, and overall, we actually fully 100% everything on that particular world this time around, unlike the forms of how it does in the original version of the game, that basically we just couldn't be bothered for whatever reason back in the forms of in 2019, and you probably named the rest of it though. So today, for this video is about the fact that we're about to continue things on and move on to the next world, which appears to be taking place in the ruins. So of course, just like the original version of the game, there's only a grand total of 3 levels in the forms of ruins area, just because I believe that the majority of the levels like this is going to be pretty lengthy. So as a result, yeah, let's dive right into the forms of the next stage, which appears to be Crisis Cavern. So because of this though, yeah, before we get into the forms of the actual rest of the commentary on this part, I would like to introduce yourselves another special guest during the course of in the Mexi Toys department. So why don't you all introduce yourself?
Hey, I am Jigglypuff here, or someone else calls me Poen, for those of you who lived in Japan.
Oh, Jigglypuff, I did not expect you to seem able to actually just to come in here.
Well, yes, exactly, because, well, I seemed able to actually got found, thanks to the forms of Pikachu did somehow manage to found me in the course of the street. So as a result of that kind of stuff though, he asked me to able to join in the Mexi Toys for a bit, and then I've heard about it, it seems that you're doing quite well, all things considered, didn't you?
Well, exactly for surely, Jigglypuff, because as far as I'm aware, that you look incredibly similar to Kirby, aren't you?
Well, except the fact that I don't have the ability to able to learn the copy abilities or anything else like that, because all I'm really doing is just singing, and that's all I'm really doing. Especially noticeable about the fact that every time when I finish singing, and obviously I just fetch the actual a pen to able to actually mess around with any people's faces or anything else like that after they woke up.
Oh yeah, I do totally know what you mean, because I definitely heard about that since during the forms of in a Pokemon anime, obviously it does that particular fruition. So either way though, so yeah, because of that though, welcome to you, Jigglypuff, to the forms of, well, the Mexi Toys department, because as far as I'm aware, though I'm hoping you can able to join in the forms of the future portions of the Mexi Toys in the future.
Well, yeah, especially noticeable for what I've heard about the fact that you're getting pretty close to the forms of 700 subscribers, don't you?
Well, exactly for surely, as far as I can definitely tell for this point, because obviously currently at the moment, I'm playing Pac-Man World Re-Pac. Have you ever heard about that game before?
Well, for I've heard it, it's basically a remake of the original Pac-Man World, originally came out in the OG PlayStation.
Or to be more specifically, PlayStation 1.
Oh, because there's actually more PlayStations nowadays, isn't there?
Yeah, including by the forms of PlayStation 2, 3, 4, and now 5. And what I've noticed about the fact that one thing that Sonic has totally forgot to mention about, during the course of in the Sonic Frontiers Let's Play, basically he forgot to mention about that another thing that PlayStation was actually working on. And that's what appears to be more accurately a sequel to the Wii U, which, if you don't know what that is though, basically they're about to be making PlayStation Q, at least as far as I can definitely notice from the start. Because of that though, yeah, that just came out of nowhere. Or, technically speaking, about the fact that it's actually codenamed PlayStation Project Q, which as a result of that kind of stuff though, it looks exactly like the Wii U gamepad, more than anything.
Yeah, I can totally see why about the fact that it has a similar resemblance to the forms of the Wii U, despite the Wii U has been a pretty flop, you know what I'm saying.
So, either way though, that's as far as I can usually think about for the sake of the forms of PlayStation Project Q. We're not exactly sure when does this particular device will be releasing, but it might be sometime until 2024 or 2025, depending on the forms of current stimulations as far as this is concerned. So either way though, so yeah, oh yeah, there's one thing I also forgot to mention since on Thursday. Basically, every time whenever I activate the actual Super Pac-Man mode,
you know, every time whenever I grab the power pallet, basically it allows me to able to walk through bottomless pits and stuff like that, or in some cases lava, because obviously if you dare touch the lava, it's instant death, similar to the forms of how it does in the original game, alongside with the forms of Pac-Man World 2 as well. Gee, you must have known any other facts, don't you, Pac-Man?
Well, yes, exactly, Jigglypuff, because I already, now usually adore every single Pac-Man World games right now. Well, apart from the forms of the reboot series, which appears to be Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures video games, because I don't know about you, the actual redesign of me looks incredibly ugly. During the course of being a Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventure series, which, have you ever heard about that cartoon before?
I haven't exactly heard about it, but for what I can tell, it just feels a bit mixed bag as far as this is concerned.
Well, that's mainly because most of the criticisms are usually summed up as such like, how come Pac-Man does have fingers for whatever reason?
Well, I was thought about it because good thing I did not come across into the ugly redesign of yourself during the course of the Super Smash Bros. Games because, gee, no wonder why that Sakurai has decided to choose the classic Pac-Man design as based off from the Pac-Man World games.
Yeah, because it's the most iconic thing in the world, especially because about the fact that it's pretty similar to the forms of how it does it for the Sonic Boom TV series, whatever they managed to criticize him for the forms of, well, you know what I'm saying about the forms of the redesign for at first glance with their first impressions or somewhat.
Yeah, I can totally see about that particular point right there, Pac-Man, but either way.
So, anyway, so without further ado, about the fact that when it comes to other, like, news to discuss, because obviously about the fact that I've already mentioned about the fact that eventually PlayStation is working on Project Q, which it seems kind of weird whenever you first look at it though, but, I think what that does is I'm pretty sure it'll act out pretty much like the forms of remote play for PlayStation 5 or something like that. So as a result of that kind of stuff though, yeah, it just feels very similar to the Wii U despite it was actually PlayStation brand. So, yeah, you get the gist of it though. So either way, it's gonna make sure if I need to double check if what's beyond to the left and just make sure I don't able to get hit by these particular falling debris or something like that. So just in case I don't able to die from this point, because if I do dare die, I have to restart the beginning portion of that segment again, so that won't be that fun, at least from my experience anyway, so... But at least I finally got myself a checkpoint right there, so I should be okay. So either way, even though despite the fact that I've accidentally died on the very first boss in the game because of this unexpected grab you onto ledges syndrome or somewhat like that, so... Anyway though, the next thing we'd like to point things out is that...
Oh, by the way, Pac-Man, how come you every time whenever you manage to do a lot of commentary and stuff like that, during the course of the Maxi Toys Let's Plays and stuff like that, how come you decided able to mention about the forms of news or anything else like that when it comes to like, I don't know, gaming related, film related, or anything else like that?
Well, the thing is though, because if we decided able to realize that there's not much else to talk about, during the course of certain points throughout the whole thing, and then basically those about the fact that it's pretty fun to able to actually discuss upon news, updates, or anything else like that when it comes to current situations. Like, for instance, that recently, that Ubisoft Forward showcase, it did somehow manage to able to prepare for the actual video coming up during at some point until the 12th of June. So as a result of that kind of stuff though, I think it's probably best if I'll let Sonic be able to mention more about it until only when he goes back on to Sonic Frontiers until tomorrow. Because if you couldn't tell already, Jigglypuff, that I'm working on this game at the moment, Pac-Man World Re-Pac, because obviously it's been a very long time since I actually have last done our Let's Plays in terms of something related to Pac-Man stuff. Well, the last time being, of course, the forms of, well, let's just say the first one we've ever done was Pac-Man Party for the Wii, despite I found it a bit, pretty overwhelming, or underwhelming, honestly. Especially because it's nothing like the forms of, well, it plays kind of like Mario Party, except, well, it feels a lot slower in comparison to the forms of how it does it from any other Mario Party games. And also I feel like the sound effects on that game, Pac-Man Party, it's way too repetitive. Like, I'll admit though right away though, it is totally repetitive, so... Anyways though, so let's go and... Oh god! Ah, darn it, I died. I suppose it really doesn't matter to me anyway though, especially on the Switch version's case, because, I couldn't imagine if I was trying to do this on the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One versions. Basically though, I'll have to do like one singular run or anything else like that for a no death run or anything else like that, but beggars else can't be choosers, I guess. But hey, at least on the upside is though, very similar to the forms of how it does in the original version of Pac-Man World. Basically, every time when I do die, basically the amount of collectibles I keep collecting, thankfully it's saved. So as a result, I don't have to worry about just trying to keep on re-grabbing them again. Although, unlike Pac-Man World 2, I have to re-grab them entirely. So either way though, kind of tedious for sure. But, I mean, let's face it though, about the fact that I could imagine if the remake of Pac-Man World 2 will exist, then obviously it'll fix that issue. But, then again though, time will tell, especially noticeable about the fact that, well, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So,
I did not notice that at first.
Well, mind you, Jigglypuff, because of how the fact that I kind of believe you now become, you know, the popular character when it comes to the Pokemon franchise, along with Pikachu, aren't you?
Well, mind you, because me and Pikachu are the most iconic playable characters during the course of the Super Smash Bros. Days since the Nintendo 64.
Well, yes, because you obviously always be the unlockable character for almost every single games, except on the Wii U, just because you got, you know, you'll be able to become playable right from the get-go.
Oh, do I?
Well, yes, exactly, because obviously that unlike the 3DS version that you'll be a locked or unlockable character. So either way though, and there we go. I basically completed another maze right here. So either way though, I'll discuss more details about the forms of the maze thing until whenever we get to the later portion of this playthrough. So something tells me I do need to avoid that little swingy trap, because obviously if I activate one of those switches, it'll cause the actual traps to be active. So yeah, I just have to be careful about that. So anyways though, so let's talk about the forms of another discussion I'd like to point out, is that I can assure you that Sonic, he almost discussed upon everything in terms of the forms of something related to PlayStation Showcase, that he's actually gone to the halfway point of that particular conversation, that as it turns out, that he forgot to mention about the other conversations here and there as well, and that is of course about the fact that recently, Resident Evil 4, the remake version of Resident Evil 4, is about to be getting the VR mode, in this case virtual reality. So because of this though, and it's going to be in development during the course of the forms of the PlayStation VR 2. So of course they obviously mentioned tons of stuff related to the forms of PlayStation VR 2 after all. And because of that though, I've already mentioned one thing already. And the next thing they did revealed during the course of a PlayStation VR 2, that's of course Crossfire Surya Squad, which I think it's going to be releasing at some point in the future. I'm not exactly sure when that's going to be released. And on top of that, there's also Beat Saber, which is basically it's like a Star Wars version of a rhythm game or something like that. Although except the fact that it's nothing to do with the Star Wars themed or anything else like that. Well, it seems kind of cool about the fact that you can able to utilize with the forms of a lot of motions whenever you're trying to do like a saber, to able to feel the beat and anything else like that. So, and I think it's going to be releasing just recently or something, or potentially speaking one of those packs in particular did came out alongside with it, like for instance with Queen. Music pack, you know, where they saying Don't Stop Me Now and anything else like that, which of course I've recognized that song so many times thanks to the forms of the you know, the Sonic the Hedgehog the movie, you know, with the 2020 film and all that stuff. Yeah, you probably already know what I'm talking about. So anyways, here we go with this next bonus stage right there. So this should be a piece of cake, especially noticeable about the fact that I could surely I'm also able to go ahead and grind some more points and score, and eventually though I'm also able to get some occasional 1-ups. Well, assuming of course about the fact that if I was going pretty decently during the course of the slot machines or anything else like that, but I'm just saying this point right now, I'm still not very great at those slot machines, because obviously
every time when I was trying to rush things up, and basically that was about the fact that every time when I rushed things out, it obviously didn't turn out so well. So, but either way though, that's as far as saying goes, that's all I could really think about it, so... Anywho though, so, yeah, let's talk about another thing that has been announced during the course of the PlayStation Showcase, and I think we're basically almost done in terms of PlayStation Showcase announcements, and these are Aranza Sunshine 2 is going to be releasing on at some point in this year in 2023 on the PlayStation VR 2. And there's also Anubis, which is going to be releasing at some point on the 4th of July. In some cases though, I think that was the exact same day as, I was assuming to you, Independence Day during the course of in North America. Yeah, I was thinking about that because they always attempt to able to do Independence Day in every single year when it comes to the forms of the 4th of July, do they? Well, just to ensure about the fact that, well, they just obviously got some fireworks and all that stuff, so even though it was a bit tricky to explain because it's been about roughly a year ago since when the last Independence Day celebration was taking place during the course of in America, so but either way though, but trust me, I already know a lot of topics like that, especially notable that someone said in the comments obviously keep on pointing things out during the course of in the past few days or something like that, so yeah, that seems quite intriguing and all that stuff. Oh, and there's also short things worth noting for is about the fact that, actually I'll get to more now in a second, because here we go on to Manic Miner, and after this, we can probably get into is by far is the hardest boss fight in the game, at least as far as I can usually tell for this point, so... Okay, quick go right there, sorry about that folks, because we somehow realized that we stumbled across into yet another power cut at this point, and as you can tell, we accidentally lost one life, because every time when I do die, the game for some reason just autosaves, so because of this though, yeah, I'm not too pleased about that. Although, it might take a bit of some time to get used to with that particular system as far as this is concerned. Oh jeez, that's very annoyingly consistent at this point in time, especially because about the fact that you're doing quite well, don't you? Well, apart from a couple of exceptions though, like, you know about the fact that during the course of in the ruins area, that certain areas are extremely dark, like literally dark. And as far as I can tell, that this level right here with the forms of Manic Miner is without a doubt the longest level in the game, because that's the reason why that this was originally gonna have 3 regular levels plus 1 boss fight, but it turns out about the fact that it still has 2 levels instead of the forms of 3. So, well, 2 levels with the forms of 1 additional boss, so yeah, I guess that pretty much summed up as such. So, but either way, I'm really hoping about the fact that during the course of the next boss coming up, I'm hoping that they'll fix the difficulty for the sake of the forms of Anubis Rex on this remake, because as far as I've noticed, on the PlayStation 1 version, in this case the original version of that boss fight, it's pretty unfair during the course of the forms of Anubis Rex on the forms of in the original version because of this massive difficulty spike. Well, at the same time though, because of the forms of that massive hitbox in the beginning portion of the fight, which I must say, looking back on that boss fight on the PlayStation 1 version, it is very, very understandably unfair. Although, because of considering that this is what the second boss fight, at least as far as I can tell, because as a result of that kind of stuff though, it's pretty similar to the forms of how it does on this unfair difficulty when it comes to secondary, not only for the second levels, with not only for the likes of Shadow's campaign, but also with Silver's campaign as well. During the course of in Sonic 06, like obviously about the fact that with Tropical Jungle is definitely one of Silver's worst levels in the game. And on top of that, with the forms of Shadow's Kingdom Valley level is without doubt the hardest level in the forms of Shadow's campaign. And on top of all that stuff though, with Silver the Hedgehog as a boss fight, that gee, with first impressions didn't go too well, which you probably get the idea about that. And for those of you able to still remember that, back in 2006 on the Xbox 360 version, or 2007 on the PlayStation 3 release, I mean, relatively speaking, you know exactly what I'm gonna say, so... Anywho though, oh yeah, in addition to that, speaking of the forms of something related to Sonic the Hedgehog, I think, if I recall correctly, that we actually did manage able to getting ourselves, well, to be more specifically, it's only in America somehow. So as a result of that kind of stuff, that I just want to point things out, that until at some point on the 24th of July, basically the Sonic Underground DVD re-release, specifically Sonic Underground, the complete series. Well, mind you, it only has one season, because the second season is officially cancelled back then, especially because of that massive criticism with the forms of musical numbers. Like, seriously, every single episode in Sonic Underground, there's a musical number. Like, it's kind of similar to the forms of how it does it in Donkey Kong Country, the TV series. Have you ever heard of that? It is pretty horrendous for that particular series, as far as what I've heard about it anyway. And I did not mean to move the actual microphone, by the way, because I think that, I'm almost gonna get knocked over by that. So, yeah, I will forgive you for this point, Jigglypuff. Yeah, thanks for that, Pac-Man. I appreciate about that. So, anyway, because yeah, for I've seen the footage on Donkey Kong Country as a TV series, even though despite the fact that I did see 2 seasons, well, it still pretty much feels a bit of an embarrassment for the animation department, although it did surprisingly well in the likes of Canada for some reason back in the day, which I honestly have no idea why. I've somehow managed able to explain about any of those things. So, anywho though, in terms of the forms of Sonic Underground though, basically though, it's about the fact that it did spawn in 4 DVDs, and obviously it's going to be releasing in America during the course of the 25th of July, during the course of this year. So as a result, well, technically speaking, that we've already had Sonic Underground DVD box set, except with 1 disc missing, which appears to be disc 6, which does manage to feature, you know, with the forms of the clone, or 3 is a crowd episode, where basically it involves around Sonic, Manic, and Sonia, at least as far as I can recall. And basically though, they come across into the doppelganger versions of themselves, and obviously Dr. Robotnik wants to request them to able to deal with the doppelganger versions of themselves. So, at least 4 I've heard about anyway, but then again, it's been ages since I actually have last watched the forms of Sonic Underground, and yeah, I didn't like it. I did not like the actual series at all, because it just feels way too corny, and on top of that, a lot of musical numbers, and on top of that though, well, for whatever reason, I just somehow instantly lost interest. Well, I do know for one thing in mind, that it does have Knuckles as an appearance during the course of the forms of one of the 90s Sonic cartoon series, which, as a result of that kind of stuff, though, that was the only good thing about Sonic Underground. But aside from that, yeah, it's hard to get back into it, because I would soon need to say that this show is the series itself is dull, and I really did not enjoy it anymore. Well, at least as far as I can definitely say the same thing when it comes to the majority of those live-action Disney movies, which, as a result, ugh. What's wrong about them? Well, let me tell you, Jigglypuff, it messes up my nostalgia. Like, it seriously does. So, in fact, there's a lot of haters out there 24/7. Oh, do you mean like any forms of in Twitter, or Instagram, or anything else like stuffing relates to this? Well, for the majority of the social media for this point, Jigglypuff, I'm gonna say this right now. Oh, yeah, I think you get the idea for this point, so... Yeah, anyway, and, another thing I should probably point things out for this point as well, that, when it comes to those upcoming movies, at some point in this month, which are, the next Indiana Jones film, which appears to be by the forms of the Dial of the Destiny, and also Internal, or Elemental. For what I've noticed about the fact that when it comes to the forms of the Rotten Tomatoes score, as far as they've somehow managed able to bring this up, they both are not doing very well at the beginning. Well, despite the fact that those films never came to public release just yet. Although time will tell, especially noticeable about the fact that maybe potentially they'll try to able to improve the score during the course of it later down the road. Well, kinda hard to tell honestly, and in fact that recently that the rest of the Indiana Jones stuff is now on Disney Plus, so gee, no wonder why it's now getting the 5th installments. So yeah, I'm optimistic about that. Well, I'm curious to know what the reviews are going to turn out to be. And what I've noticed about the fact that we get the strange feeling that when it comes to the forms of Elemental, as far as the film itself, it might also claim the box office bomb, because it seems about the fact that, well, it's hard to tell honestly, because I know for a fact that the film hasn't been out yet, which I think we've only got 10 more days to go, as a matter of fact, when that film is going to be releasing, so yeah, I can totally see that. So, well, especially noticeable for what I've heard is actually now getting a little bit of a downgrade compared to the past. Well, I can assure you for this point, it starts to get a little bit too bleak or anything else like this, you know?
Yeah, true. True. So, oh yeah, speaking of which though, is about the fact that, well, apparently though, for what I've noticed that Sonic also forgot to mention about, during the course of a Sonic Frontiers playthrough, that he did mention about the forms of the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 is definitely coming, but one thing he didn't expect, that they also going to include, well, not only do they include Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3, but also, out of nowhere, that they're also receiving both Metal Gear 1 and 2, which, as a result, is pretty interesting, all things considered. So, I wonder if the rest of the other volumes were able to come to its fruition, so... But then again, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the future, so... Anyway, so speaking of which though, is about the fact that recently, until tomorrow anyway, that Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak is getting the final digital event at some point until tomorrow. So they might be able to actually mention about the final details after the events of about a year ago, since when the Sunbreak expansion DLC has first came to its public release. So as a result though, I'm curious to know what the updates are going to bring out to be during the course of the forms of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak game, despite the fact that we still haven't got the game for ourselves, you know, because, well, we're biased, I guess, when it comes to preferring franchises we do enjoy. Well, I don't know about you, Jigglypuff, because I think I'm also able to skip that game for the time being.
Well, at least if you might give it a chance or something in the future, if, depending on the forms of your taste or somewhat.
Well, it's hard to tell for this point, because either way though, it's been quite some time, you know? Oh yeah, did you know about the fact that recently, that the Super Mario Bros. Movie was actually now in the number 2 spot, in terms of the forms of the best animated movies box office earnings right now?
What I've heard, yeah, they're doing really, really well, do they?
Well, especially because considering about the fact that, well, it's obviously going to be doing super duper well, especially after like almost 2 months ago, or should I say it's roughly now 2 months ago, since the actual movie came out. So because of this though, yeah, somehow it's beaten Frozen's box office. So as a result for that kind of stuff though, it's doing rather well.
Yeah, I'll admit that, especially because about the fact that the only film it needs left now, which are Frozen 2 and The Lion King remake. Oh, what's wrong?
I don't feel like trying to count the live-action version of The Lion King, because let me tell you, it's not animated though. It's like photorealistic direction, so as a result, I just don't feel like trying to count that film personally, because obviously that film just disappoints me a lot, and it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, next to the films of Son of the Mask, and also with The Cat in the Hat. God, that film was awful. The way it looked and all that stuff. Even though it does have Mike Myers as the actor for the sake of the films of Cat in the Hat himself. And even then, with the films of Think 1 and 2, God, they're more likely rejected versions of Marge Simpson or something.
Oh, really?
Well, yes, because I've seen it and, ugh, it almost makes me throw up. I mean, I can't bear it. Like, I really can't. Ugh. There's even bad enough about the fact that The Cat in the Hat, the movie, came out exactly the same year as in the last DreamWorks traditional 2D animated film has been released. Well, I think I'll let Sonic be able to mention more about it. And during at some point on next month in July, when he goes back on to the films of Sonic Frontiers, or perhaps even maybe Tiana might eventually come back to the films of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, assuming of course if we're not busy and stuff like that, but Again, time will tell. Time will tell. But anyway, so yeah, all needs left now is just beat Frozen 2, and that should be good to go for the sake of the films in the box office. You know, when it comes to animated films and all that stuff. So as a result, yeah, you know, it's doing pretty well. It's obviously doing really, really fantastic. So anyway, and I suppose the next thing I should probably explain about this as well, I guess, is that out of nowhere, that Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is definitely coming onto PC until next month, specifically July 26th, which is roughly exactly the same day as in the films within the 10th anniversary of the UK's release of the physical version of New Super Luigi U, which, yeah, gee, time flies, you know?
Yeah, because of that though, about the fact that, well, you know, time flies, you know?
Yeah, I think we've already addressed that during the course of like multiple occasions, as you probably expect. So, although unfortunately though, that when it comes to the films of something related to Disney related, that unfortunately though, both of those rides are about to shut down, or potentially speaking, closed. So as a result, first off, Disneyland's Splash Mountain is officially closed recently.
Oh gee, that's bad news.
Especially because about the fact that, well, I've heard about that ride, and it looks kind of fun to me, but it's a shame about the fact that that ride is no longer going to be in access to, which it seems kind of stinks on our part, but either way though, which as a result, I basically just give up my hopes for able to actually go into Disneyland Paris every now and then, because it just feels like, everything's changed, you know, everything's changed, so anyway, I suppose the last game I want to mention when it comes to able to actually mention something related to the forms of PlayStation showcases after all, that's what appears to be by the forms of Concord, I think is what it says anyway, and it's going to be releasing at some point on next year in 2024, for not only on the PlayStation 5, but also on PC as well, so because of this though, yeah, you probably get the gist of it though, so anywho though, another thing I should probably also mention about this as well is that, basically, when it comes to the forms of Summer de Amigo Party Central, that I believe that both Mario and Luigi have already mentioned about this, during the course of the forms within Mario Super Slugger's playthrough recently, that obviously that game has finally got released until August this year, specifically the 29th of August, and as a result, it's going to bring us jam-packed full of content during the course of the forms of the entire thing itself. And as a result, it will contain, whenever you manage able to like get the digital deluxe edition, it obviously contains quite a number of things. Like for instance, you're able to get few costumes from certain Sega games. Like for instance, you get a Sonic costume and a Tails costume, as well as the Space Channel 5 costume, and a Super Monkey Ball costume based off from II, and finally Puyo Puyo costume. So quite interesting selection right there. Although, unfortunately though, Beat from Jet Set Radio does not include it, so seems kind of a bit of a bummer, honestly. Although, luckily we're about to be getting some DLC packs based off from the Sega Music DLC pack and also Sonic Music DLC pack. So because of this though, things look a bit more optimistic and stuff like that to see what the song selections is going to be. Well, in regards to the forms of what certain DLC Sonic songs they are able to bring in. Although, let us know in the comments down below to know what the music selections is going to be like. But either way though, that'll be a discussion at a later point. Well, assuming of course if I was going to be myself, so. And plus, for those of you probably wondering, I was originally trying to able to read out the dialogue of, as you can tell, we've managed to able to rescue Pac Dog and anything else like that, which unfortunately though, that our computer just keeps lagging again, so. Does that bother you for that particular computer or laptop lag? Well, let's face it though, Jigglypuff, we've almost had this laptop for about 10 years roughly, so because of that though, yeah, I just have no idea about the fact that why we're still stuck with it after about almost 10 years or so. But anyway, here we go on to, oh boy, Anubis Rex. So as a result, hopefully this boss fight will be a lot easier than the forms of how it does it on the PlayStation version of this fight. I mean, let me tell you, as I said before, it is really unfair on the original version. So of course, you still getting chased by the forms of this cursed mummy hand and anything else like that in the beginning. But then once you try to avoid a lot of hazards, as you can tell, then obviously, well, as soon as you're able to make your way to the end, basically we can able to deal with the actual Anubis Rex himself. So because of this though, yeah, I can totally see why about the fact that a lot of people seem to die on this boss fight a lot on the original version of the game. So because of this though, at least potentially speaking though, we somehow did this no problem, so...
Alright, it's time for you to take on Anubis himself.
And as it turns out, that this entire arena is actually not too shabby this time around. Because obviously, about the fact that luckily we don't have to worry about just like, you know, fell into the lava or anything else like that. Although the entire gimmick itself of this boss fight remains the same, although thankfully it's a lot more tamed than the forms of how it does in the original version this time around. And in addition to that, well, I can assure you at this point, the only drawback when it comes to most of those boss fights in this remake is that every time when you do die, at one point in any of those boss fights in the game, I believe you have to start all over again in the forms within the beginning portion of the phase. Because unlike the forms of how it does it on the original version of Anubis Rex, I believe every time whenever you managed able to deal with one weak spot, and basically the checkpoint did somehow randomly activate every time when you deal with one of those phases. So as a result of that kind of stuff though, I'm very happy about the fact that Anubis Rex in this remake is actually a lot more funner and a lot more easier to deal with this time around though, which I'll give this version some credit for. Well, as a result of that kind of stuff though, it might be seems pretty easy side. So because of this though, but then again though, it's nowhere near as unfair as the forms of how it does it on the first time around. So I appreciate about that. So I would have liked able to mention about the last thing I want to mention at this point today, but honestly I think I'll let oh yeah, there's actually one last thing I want to mention, is that another one of those rides is about to shut down, which appears to be by the forms of Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser is shutting down at Walt Disney World until at the very end of September, specifically September 30th. So yeah, it doesn't look too good after all. Although speaking of which though, is about the fact that when it comes to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, when it comes to those early reviews of the forms of Rotten Tomatoes, or when it comes to critic scores they somehow received, is 52%, while in comparison to the forms of Elemental, I think it's roughly on the same vote. Like for instance with, oh I don't know, I didn't exactly pay attention to the forms of the review scores as much, but either way though, because I'm just so pleased about the fact that I can now deal with the forms of Anubis Rex with no issues whatsoever. So obviously you still need to able to deactivate one of those little referral panels, as you can see, and because of that though, that way you should able to get your chance to able to actually just to deal with that particular attack. Although just like the original version of this fight though, it only has like 4 phases, so although the only thing you do need to worry about though is of course the forms of those meteor rock attack that he just summons, and also with the forms of the tornadoes as well. Although thankfully the tornadoes in this particular point is actually a lot easier to dodge this time around, because obviously the arena itself is self-explanatory, and especially noticeable about the fact that again, you don't have to worry about just trying to able to deal with a precise timing anymore. Although there's also you can able to utilize with that particular fluttering jump, as you can tell, but I rarely use that point. So, but either way, that pretty much takes care of the forms of the ruins area, and my god, that was very lengthy as far as this is concerned. Although originally I was trying to able to put in with like 2 separate parts of this world,
But, oh well, no big deal. Oh yeah, one more definition thing I want to mention is that recently My Little Pony Make Your Mark Chapter 4 has released, which appears to be buddy forms of Bridal Word stock. So because of that though, that's the only thing I can probably mention about that. And I'm sure we'll let Sonic Wable to mention more about it until when he goes back onto Sonic Frontiers tomorrow. So either way, and I think, relatively speaking, that pretty much does it for the second world. So either way, I've only got 4 worlds to go, so of course the next world I'm about to be hop into is, of course, Spaceland, or Space Area to be more specific. So yeah, thank you Jigglypuff for joining me for this particular commentary session of the forms of this game right here. I appreciate about this for this point, Pac-Man, and I would love to join in with you for the sake of the majority of the Maxi Toys department, so maybe at some point in the future, if depending on the forms of whatever Let's Play we're about to tackle through, so yeah, I would love to. See you guys then.
See ya, Jigglypuff. We'll meet again sometime.
Yep, I will.
Anyway though, and I think suffice to say, I think we should probably end things off at this point right here, so join me next time for more of Let's Play of Pac-Man World Re-Pac. As I mentioned this before, we're about to be heading on to the next world in the forms of Pac-Man World Re-Pac, and that is Space Area. So I'll see you guys until on Thursday. Later, fellas.